call upon our all panelists and our moderator. So this is one of the important panel, how information technology and new age technologies changing the dynamics of higher education in India. And we have a young moderator who is Zonal Head College Dunia, Taranjot Singh. Welcome, Mr. Singh. Nice to have you once again. And we also have Shaila Raj, Chief Executive Officer, Subharti University. Welcome, Shaila Raj, Dr. Shaila. And I would also call upon Sudhanshu Verma, who's the Chief Operating Officer with the Bennett University. Hi, Mr. Also, Manish Dalmia, Director, Marketing and PR, NMIMS, Dean to be University. Welcome, Mr. Manish. Also, Bharat Chauhan, Chief Marketing and Admission Officer, Thapar Institute of Engineering and Technology.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Welcome, Mr. Bharat. I would also like to call upon Kanchi Khanna, Senior Director, Outreach and Admissions, Plaksha University. Welcome, Kanchi Khanna. And also Dr. Ravi Kumar Jain, Director, SIBM, Hyderabad, Telangana. Welcome, Mr. Jain.
Good afternoon to one and all. Namaskar.
Also welcome Professor Aditya Mohan and PR TA. Welcome, Mr. Aditya.
Good afternoon to all.
Over to you, Taranjot Singh, Zonal Head, College Dunia.
Thanks a lot, Sudhir. Well, technology has massively impacted every aspect of our lives. It has transformed how we work, how we communicate, how we find information, how we get entertained, how we stay healthy, how we consume content. But one of the most important aspects of the life, which is the higher education sector, it has been relatively resilient, undisrupted by the technology. There are dimensions where the technology has actually massively penetrated in the higher education, but there are other aspects which have still remained untouched. Today, APAC gives us the opportunity to discuss the nuances of this aspect, and we are here to discuss how information technology and new age technology is changing the dynamics of the higher education in India. Hi, I am Taranjot from College Dunia, and with me there's an esteemed panel of stewards across the universities. Let me have a round of introduction for the viewers for this heavyweight panel. Professor Aditya Jadhav, the Professor of Finance at the Tapmi Institute of Tapmi Institute, Manipal. He currently holds the position of Chairman, Corporate Engagement and Branding at Tapmi. His research interests lie in the area of corporate finance and corporate governance. Has conducted executive programs for large number of companies in the area of project finance. A very warm welcome, Professor. 35 years as a brand communication and marketing professional, having sold an array of products from forklift trucks to printing chemicals and intravenous fluids. A higher education marketing professional, Mr. Bharat Chauhan, the Chief Marketing and the Admissions Officer at the Thapar Institute of Thapar Institute, my alma mater as well. A very warm welcome, Mr. Bharat. A recipient of IC3, counseling-based approach to student recruitment and admissions award 2019, Miss Kanchi Khanna is the marketing and communication specialist. She's worked in the communication designer and the designer teacher for over a decade before taking on the education management. She's passionate about promoting the liberal education in India, earlier as a director outreach at the Ashoka University, then director communications and outreach at the Kriya University, and now as a senior director outreach and admissions at the Plaksha University. A very warm welcome, Ms. Khanna. Mr. Manish Dalmia, the Director of Marketing and PR at the SVKMS NMIMS University, highly motivated, visionary, and a performance-driven individual with marketing experience of over 16 years of success in developing high-quality, omni-channel, effective, and profitable integrated marketing programs, advertising campaigns with revenue-generating responsibilities across industries spanning from financial services, commodities, and the education sector. Good evening, MD. Dr. Ravi Kumar Jain, a startup evangelist, a doctorate in business management, holding the MBA in finance and PGD in ICT management. Dr. Jain brings in over 25 years of rich experience in the family business management, teaching and training, research, business consulting, coaching, mentoring, and academic administration. Institution building and championing new initiatives has been his forte. He's an avid researcher with over 120 international and national publications to his credit. He's authored and edited 40 plus books in the area of business management, banking, and finance. A very warm welcome, Dr. R.K. Jain. Mr. Sudhanshu Verma, the Chief Operating Officer at the Bennett University and alumnus of BITS Pilani with over 31 years of experience across multiple industries like FMCG, consulting, software solutions, software services, education. He has worked in various blue chip companies like Hindustan Unilever, BPL, Manipal Global Education, etc. A very warm welcome to you, sir. Dr. Shaila Raj, the Chief Executive Officer at the Subharti University. She has combined the benefits of engineering and dentistry for the benefits of patients, and she has done a doctoral thesis on the novel concept of computational fluid dynamics. Her keen interest in academics is reflected in the fact that she has published numerous research papers. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am. I open this panel for the opening remarks for on the topic that how the information technology and new age technology is actually changing the dynamics of higher education. Starting with Professor Aditya Jadhav, can we have your opening remarks, please, sir?
Yeah. Good evening, Taranjot and my esteemed panelists. I thank APAC as well as the government of Telangana for having me here. Okay, I personally believe that technology has always been a facilitator for education rather than any other hindrance. You know, right from the printing press of 16th century to Coursera today, you know, technology has always helped education to reach and to grow. So there is no question of technology not supporting education. At the same time, I understand, I have discussed with a lot of my colleagues, and you know, there is a fear that okay, technology-based MOOCs or many other aspects would actually make traditional education irrelevant. But I don't think that's the case, or I don't believe in that. I think that's a little difficult question to deal with, but it's not the case for a simple reason. What can technology provide? You know, let's assume, let's take NEP. NEP basically says that higher education institutions, HEIs, should ensure employability of the students, right? That's the key focus, and a well-rounded development. That's the second focus if you go through NEP. An employee, once he joins a job, or is basically supposed to collect information, assimilate information, analyze it, take a decision, interpret it, take a decision, and implement it. I think Coursera or any MOOCs based or technology based education system, which does not involve a personal touch, which does not involve the guidance from a faculty, can help a student only achieve the first three stages. That is, collect information, assimilate it, and analyze it, right? But it is only when there will be a guidance from a guru, or there will be guidance from a faculty, a personalized discussion and engagement, that the next three stages, that is interpretation of that analysis, right interpretation, making a right decision, and implementing that decision correctly would be possible. That's why I think it is not going to change us, but what I personally think is actually this technology-based education is best thing that has happened till now. You know, many schools which are purely information-based can actually now move to a next stage. We spend a lot of time providing information to students. If that is, aspect can be handed over to self-study modes through Coursera or some other aspects, you know, faculty in the classroom can discuss more on the on the interpretation, decision making, implementation aspects, and you know, that will certainly increase the employability of the students. So that's from my side. Thank you. Thanks, Taranjot. Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot, Professor. Moving on to Mr. Bharat Chauhan from my alma mater, Thapar Institute of Engineering and Technology. Mr. Bharat, can we have your opening remarks, please?
Good afternoon, everybody. Many thanks to the Telangana Technical Education Department and, of course, the APAC News Network for having facilitated this interaction. It's a privilege to be with such esteemed panelists. Yes, I think the discussion's been moving around COVID-19, around the new national education policy and technology. And I quite agree with what Dr. Aditya Mohan said, that technology is a great facilitator, much more than a hindrance in the education sector, so much more so. Though I would believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not an academician myself, that I think the test prep sector seems to have adopted technology much faster than probably what higher education institutions have done. Higher education institutions seem to be now being forced to do it, courtesy the COVID-19 pandemic, which is now therefore being seen as the new normal. And of course, it's a moot point to what extent will COVID-19 really change the way education is going to be delivered across higher education institutions. Having said that, I do see a lot of rapid transformation happening even in higher education institutions. For instance, 5 years ago, blended learning was something which seemed to be encountering a lot of resistance even amongst the better or tier 1 institutions. Today, blended learning has become a part of a new normal, number one. Number two, I am quite pleasantly surprised to discover that the first term at our institution has already been completed, and students and faculty are on a break. So I think a lot of good, not that the COVID-19 was a good thing to happen, but I think a lot of good things have happened in the process. And I think somewhere the confluence of the new national education policy, what is being forced upon us by the way of COVID-19, I think is bringing in a lot of interesting changes. And I think, to probably quote Bill Gates, he said that, okay, we sometimes overestimate what technology will do for us in the shorter term, but underestimate what it will do in the longer term. So I think that is the way to go. And frankly speaking, we seem to be in very, very exciting times. And that's what I would like to share in terms of my comments. And over to the next panelist.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Bharat. Ms. Khanna, over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, your thoughts on the topic, your opening remarks, and specifically highlighting from your rich experience how technology is actually helping with respect to the outreach aspect of higher education. Yeah. Over to you, ma'am, please.
Absolutely, Taranjeet. Thank you so much. So the one premise that we started with, and we are setting up this new university called Plaksha University in Chandigarh, was that technology is evolving faster than ever before. What used to take decades is now happening over a couple of years, right? And machines were earlier working for us; they're now working with us, and they're also trying to augment us in many interesting ways. So we are really, in many ways, redefining what it means to be a human, what it means to work, and we are completely becoming embedded in this technology-driven world. We know that technology has the power to do many things. It's going to completely change the way we work and live, and that's something that another of our panelists said earlier. But I think what we have not focused on is the tech education. That needs to evolve too. We need to prepare our workforce for the uncertainties of this future. Precisely the kind of world that comes to a standstill in a matter of few weeks with just the coming of a virus, right? It's very heartening to see this entire education system, how it's transforming, exciting opportunities coming up for students in very interdisciplinary areas, which really challenge the traditional ways of learning. So a number of universities have taken the lead here. Plaksha, in that context, is a university which is really trying to reimagine tech education and research. And you're completely right. It's not just how learning and teaching happens, but also how we recruit students. In fact, technology becomes a kind of a core differentiator in attracting students and corporate partners. Institutions need to demonstrate their commitment to these advanced technologies, and only if they do so, they'll be able to attract some of the brightest and smartest students to come and join them, or the corporates to come and recruit from them, right? These technologies really, when the start of the pandemic, we were all forced to take our learning online, but there was this one critical concern which said, will we be able to offer the same level of student engagement, the same level of experience? Will students miss out on the hands-on interactive learning? Because learning doesn't happen only in classrooms, right? It happens, and it's not just the lectures that deliver learning. It also happens outside. It happens in the corridors, in clubs, in societies. Students really find themselves. So what are we doing there? And I think there's an opportunity for us to take learning to an entirely new level. These immersive technologies like augmented reality, virtual reality, they have the opportunity to take learning to a level which we never imagined before. I mean, think of how history students would learn about the Syrian conflict in a virtual reality world when they feel like they're walking through those streets. What about engineering students who are designing automobiles in a safe environment? Medical students who have virtual operating rooms. So it's far more exciting, and we need to really grab this. There are, of course, so many challenges, we'll come across our way when we do it, whether it's the prohibitive costs, whether it's the finding the skilled people, whether it's the skilling of the faculty members. It's a huge uphill task. But I think we shouldn't get daunted with it. We should not get intimidated. We should get familiar with the technology. We should, just as our students do. This generation is really the digital natives. They've grown up in this environment. They know how it works, right? I think it's us who have to adapt to it. And it's going to change education in the years to come in ways which we didn't imagine, like learning analytics, the innovation culture, the labs. And also, I would like to mention here, and I'm sorry, Taranjot, I'm digressing a little because I'm going to leave after this. I had a hard stop at 5:10. So, we need to redefine education, maybe move to subscription models, maybe move to models where students really take charge of their learning and say, I'm going to do XYZ courses with this university and maybe YZ and A courses in a university in China, and combine those credits and really earn the degree that I want to earn. So we'll have to be flexible, we'll have to be nimble. Out of all the organizations that have survived for more than 100 years, universities are those. And universities are that. So I don't think it's really something to be worried about or concerned about. I think these are really exciting times ahead. And there's a lot to do, a huge uphill task, but really something which is as exciting as ever. And in terms of outreach, there are those fantastic virtual tours you can create for your incoming students. You can have learning, you can have customer relationship management processes which are amazingly high tech and allow you the kind of engagement you would have never thought of before. So there are those opportunities as well. And I'll leave the rest of the answers for more questions later. And I'm sure my other colleagues have a lot more to add. So thank you, Taranji. Thank you for that.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Khanna. Thanks a lot. Over to you, Mr. Dalmi, over to you. Your thought on your opening remarks, and specifically with respect to your rich experience that you have as a director in marketing in PR, how actually technology is helping you in transforming SVKM and MIMS. I need to unmute you just a second. Can we unmute, please? Yeah.
I would like to thank Government of Telangana, APAC, Mr. Akash Agarwal, Mr. Taranjot Singh for having me today to share my views on the influence of technology. And I would like to touch base on a couple of 2-3 important points. One is the government very strong focus on increasing the GER from current 27% to 50% by 2050. A daunting task, but a task which has to be done. The knowledge has to be democratized across the country beyond the geographies. And a lot of good work has already started happening there. And second, I would like to also speak on my opening remarks on the current influence of technology. As Taranjit mentioned earlier, that this one sector is resilient and still not catching with technology. I would slightly like to disagree here because a lot of technology is already embedded in the university space in last, I would say, 10 years. If you look at the entire university work starts with outreach and enrollment, getting into admissions, then academics, and then results, and then student outcome. If you measure everything, you always have the technology tools, like you have Blackboard, learning management system, you have lecture capture a technology, then you have test prep, then you have all other SAP to seek admissions collect the fees, and also release the merit list for the students. So technology is all pervasive, and education is a sector which is also going to be staying away from it. So we firmly embrace technology, and I'm happy that you chose this topic because it's a very pertinent time, because the influence of technology has increased in last 1 year, especially last 9 months post-pandemic, because then we realized that we had nowhere to go. So that means we have to adopt technology, we have to embrace technology. Why it is more so important? Two more reasons. Because we have to look at our target group, students, millennials, generation Z, Z, Y, whatever you want to call them. Their attention span is very, very small. And you have to understand that how they expect education. So the teaching at the higher education institution has to move from the teaching ecosystem to the learning ecosystem. I believe the entire teaching learning process, I have my very highly qualified seniors here, I would like to submit some observation that it has to be now a user driven. Look at any industry where technology has made a mark, be it e-commerce, be it retail, everything is user driven. So is the technology, so is the education sector, and so it would be in the long term as well. You have to deliver the education the way the audience wants to consume the education. The audience is something, somebody on the go all the time, very less attention span. They want to be a part of an interdisciplinary group, as Kanchi mentioned, and a previous speaker also mentioned, that the transfer of credit. These are the options the students are looking at. They're looking for a very stimulating academic environment where we can foster learning, relearning, and unlearning, so that that's a new normal end of the day. Nobody would have ever expected that a pandemic will change the whole world. Our seniors, our faculty members who earlier used to be non-technology oriented, they have become the fastest adopters of technology. And as Bharat sir mentioned here, that the one term is already finished, and that's the way we have seen it at SVKM as well. So if you, as you asked the question, a very specific one, that how we have been able to bring technology. So we have been able to bring technology almost in all the aspects of the work which we are doing. Right from the enrollment, we have customer relationship management software like Salesforce. At admissions, we have SAP, and running the academics, we have SAP. Plus we have learning management systems, we have library management systems, we have research systems. So I think in all the aspects of technology which can be included to run a very high-end education ecosystem, we are there. Because end of the day, the way world is changing by the minute, the influence and confluence of AI, machine learning, augmented reality, virtual reality, you have to give user a different kind of experience, because you have to also transcend the knowledge beyond a 993 university which we have, in order to increase the access of quality education to one and all in the country, in the semi-urban areas, in the rural areas, in the tier 3, tier 4. How you're going to open universities everywhere? It is not possible. That is when, if we see the edtech market, which is growing fairly at a very higher pace, 26-27% CAGR, while universities are growing at a rate of 5% or maybe undergrowing. I'm talking about largely the established universities. The reason is very, very clear. You have to reach out to the audience at a very lesser cost, so that you touch base with all the price points across the country. So I think technology is a no-brainer. We all have to embrace it, adopt, and also have to make our systems in such a way that technology paves the way for a faster integration of education outcome vis-a-vis the student fee which they pay, so that there's a very clear measurable ROI, and also which helps governments in meeting the overall enrollment objectives. That's very critical. This were our opening remarks.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Dalmia. Very, very insightful from that perspective. Dr. R.K. Jain, can we have your opening remarks, sir? Can we have your remarks, please? APAC team, can you please make them unmute? Yeah, thanks.
A very good afternoon to all the esteemed panelists, and let me put on record my gratitude to APAC for making me part of this panel to speak on this topic, and also CTED of Government of Telangana. Mr. Mittal, special thanks to you, and Mr. Agarwal, who has been updating on a minute-to-minute basis about everything about this program. Thank you so much, and I'm sure the program since yesterday has been going very well. The topic that we have on hand is about IT, and as our esteemed panelists have already shared their thoughts on whether or not technology is a no-brainer. I mean, we have to go for it, and we have to go big time for it. And as rightly said, an umpteen number of forums like this, COVID has come as a blessing in disguise in this particular perspective. It's a bad thing. It has created a lot of trouble to the mankind, but yes, it has expedited the change process. It has pushed us to adopt the change, especially higher education guys, because they found themselves nowhere. I mean, what to do? Rest all businesses, godown se chala sakte hain, phone pe chala sakte hain and all. But education institution, they never thought such situation would emerge. But again, kudos to the entire system. All the academicians and academic leaders and even students have adopted to it, like fish to water, very, very quickly. And and we are here to discuss about what future lies as far as technology is concerned and how it is going to change the face of higher education. I have one thing to add to all the already expressed thoughts of my esteemed colleagues is higher education has been due for a huge transformation for a long time now.
Yeah.
For a long time now. And technology, we have been talking about technology from PPTs to simulations, and somebody said augmented realities and all. Industry 4.0 we have been talking about, and there have been complaining tones about the growing alley between the pace of change in industry vis-a-vis the pace with which higher education has been changing, especially in this part of the world. Technology has brought everything on par. In fact, it has brought in a possibility of drawing or eliminating the inequities that we had between developed nations and underdeveloped countries or emerging countries and so on. Now, going by the theme of the entire conclave, where they talked about 4 E's: expansion, excellence, equity, equal access, and employability. I must say that technology is going to bring forth affect all 4 E's. It is going to help higher education to expand, scale up big time by having multi-model, multi-mode, multi-method teaching teaching learning options, hybrid learning groups, multimedia based evaluation platforms, AI-based learning systems, platform agnostic content, as I said, immersive technology or experiential learning through using advanced alternate reality kind of a platform, and so on and so forth. So it is going to help HEIs to scale up quickly, gain the scale, which also is prescribed by NEP, that we need fewer but bigger universities going forward. And they have given a timeline of some 20 years. By 2040, all institutions should be big in scale and better in standards and quality and so on. Again, if we look at the aspects which technology is going to impact with reference to higher education, there are 2 things that we need to look at, or 2 different perspectives that we can look at. One is what it is going to affect, 2, whom it is going to affect and how. Let me spend a minute on what. These new age technologies, or the IT, a lot of IT platforms, IT technologies have been there for a long time, which were used in some corporate training, specialized trainings and all that. Now they are becoming mainstream into the higher education space, including that of simulation or these meeting platforms. Cisco always had these meeting platforms earlier, but they were all used in corporate meetings. Today, we are having it as a mainstream, a regular way of meeting people, and in fact transacting big business now. So 3 aspects of education, that is designing of curriculum, delivery of curriculum, which impacts the entire pedagogy that we have developed so far, and perhaps it may even I would say disrupt the way teaching learning process happens. And when you say design curriculum, I am also referring to the program structuring. We may have a short module, flexible programs, you have the cafeteria model or the fast food model, which can be truly given across institutions and across geographies. Technology can enable that. Now, for that to happen, the regulation or regulatory framework should support it. right? Now, for regulation also, structurally, because it's more of a policy decision and also involves a lot of political aspects into it, I will not venture there. But for regulation, it helps in compliances, in a much better manner. You don't need to really have a delegation of 20 people coming to inspect your campuses and stuff like that. It can be seamlessly done through all sorts of technology or, technology stack that we have at our disposal. Now, as far as pedagogy and delivery of program is concerned, I see maybe, if I have said this, made this statement 5 years ago, it would have been a whimsical thought or a wishful thinking. But today it looks much more possible and very, possible in near future. Is we are talking about personalization of education, or rather moving to the education 1.0 in a industry 4.0 era. In education 1.0 is where you are talking about, Gurukul and Ekal Vidyalaya, where Ek Guru, Ek Shishya ki pratha hoti thi. So, there is a possibility where technology can be sufficiently harnessed, and the speed with which technology is evolving now, or the speed with which higher education is adopting technology and will be compelled to adopt technology from various fields, across fields. The day is not too far where the delivery of program can be actually personalized, and including evaluation. When you say evaluation, we all learn in a different manner. Somebody learns, Shravanam, Mananam is what they, in Sanskrit they say, koi sun ke seekhta hai, koi bol ke seekhta hai, koi likh ke seekhta hai, and so on and so forth. So evaluation should also be done in that way. And psychologists actually suggest that evaluations should be, if they are customized to the way a student is learning or the learner is learning, then it is best evaluation that can happen, and technology can make it happen. Right, and I'll rest my comments.
We're running a little short on time, Dr. Jain. We need to
just 10 seconds, and I'm close. Yeah, sure. I close my opening remarks. Is who it is affecting? It is affecting three people: students, higher education leaders or promoters, and regulators. The students, as I have already highlighted on the teaching learning part, students, the learning part would be much more flexible for them, and they can pick and choose, and they will have more choices. Fine. The only requirement from their side is they have to reach out and they have to be passionate to learn. That element nobody can bring in. No policy, no technology can bring in. Higher education promoters will have a huge challenge, because perhaps they may see a different set of competitors, because whenever we're talking about delivery of content and development of curriculum, we are talking about development of rich content which is amenable for augmented reality or delivered through technology platforms. And there again we see that the competition may not be, for me, a competition may not be the next B school or next university. Competition may be for me, maybe a Dell Technologies or a Google or a Geo or a Microsoft, which actually is developing rich content, and a lot of other third-party content delivery platforms that we already have, like Byju's and Vedantu and so on. So with this, I rest my comments, opening comments here, and wait for the opportunity if there is any to answer the questions. Thank you.
We'll come on to that one. Very interesting point regarding the companies building the content versus the universities and HES building the content. Mr. Sudhanshu Verma, sir, can we have your opening remarks, and especially telling us regarding the challenges that universities and the colleges actually have with adapting the technology? If you can just highlight your opening remarks, sir.
So thanks, Taranjot. So thanks to you, thanks to APAC and everyone for making me a part of this panel. So let me look at it differently. I'm not from the academic side, so maybe what I say is not really going to make sense to academicians, which I hope it does. There's a saying which says necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
I think what we've learned in the last 8 months is necessity is actually the mother of teaching us to do the right thing and realizing the right thing at the right time. It has nothing to do with invention. I find it very surprising, and I have been part of a couple of webinars earlier. We keep on talking within our peer group. What I find very surprising is that at one side, everyone wants to take the GER ratio to 50% now. At one time, the target was 30%.
Yeah.
Sometime it was the target was 35%. And if we go by the wonderful regulations that we have, in place, last estimate, and I'll tell you this estimate was made about 5-6 years back, maybe Bharat may remember it or R.K. Jain may remember it. There was an article which came out saying that time the GER ratio target was set to be 30% by the year 2020. And there was an article which said we would need not too much of money, just about 155,000 lakh crores to actually build the hard infrastructure to be able to ensure that there are students who walk into that infrastructure to study. And that was the time when the wonderful thing called murder of distance education happened in this country, about 5 years back. And that was the only source actually where the GER could have gone up. And distance education was the precursor to what you are seeing today as technology coming in use in education. I think Bharat is far more senior to me. He will have a better insight and better view on that. But the fact is, that was your precursor. Distance education was a precursor of using IT, and all kinds of developments in IT happened over there in terms of teaching, learning, educating people. Okay. My only thought is, and I think a lot of us have been either telling each other within our families or within our friends, that all the good things that we've learned because of COVID, and I hate this word COVID, and I hate this time of COVID, but all the good things that we've learned in terms of, excellent personal hygiene, maintaining social distances, not stepping out or not traveling till not needed, and all the kind of money that we've saved thanks to these 8 months. My submission is that there are very good things we've learned in education. And as I said, this necessity has made us realize a lot of good things we can do in education. I only hope that, once, it is not never going to be the same normal again. But whatever normal comes in, we should not forget the good things which have actually been done to higher education. If today we are talking of 20% of the content to be, online, I think over a period of time, online should be treated, content dissemination and teaching should be treated at par with what we do on a physical way. This generation, which you see today stepping into colleges, is all about visuals. They are not our times where we used to sit with a textbook and underline and highlight and make notes. They're all about visual. And I think there is nothing better than their ability to use technology to learn. I have a daughter, she's in her second year. When she was in school, and I was told to teach her a couple of subjects, my biggest challenge in life used to be, why can't she sit steady on a chair? In front of her should be the textbook, and she should be underlining and taking notes when I'm teaching her. While what she used to do was she used to be munching on a packet of Kurkure. And at the end of it, she would go to her room, access Google, create a 1 or 2 page kind of notes. And her understanding was far better than the 1.5 hours I had spent my time trying to teach her. So this is what this generation is. I think IT has always played a key role. Maybe it was behind doors. It is coming out in the open now. And we should always keep it in the open. That is the only way your reach, your latest information, and your latest upgrades in terms of how we teach, what we teach is going to work for us. Last thought on this, the challenge is not going to be on the student side, believe me.
Yeah.
The challenge is going to be on the teaching side.
Yes.
Where I think there is a lot of time, effort, and investment which needs to go to take our brilliant faculty and make them more tech savvy.
Yeah.
Because that is something which the student today is far more tech savvy than the guy who's teaching him. I am being honest about it because our generation is not so tech savvy as a kid of 18, 19 or 20. He will crack an iPhone or an application in 10 seconds. It will take us 10 months to get comfortable with the fact, if I press this icon, will everything get deleted or not? So let's invest the money in getting the best of our communicators, which is our faculty and teachers. There's no one who can communicate better than a teacher. We just need to equip them and train them and make them more comfortable with technology so that the student does not see an uncomfortable teacher in front of him.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Mr. Sudhanshu. Professor Shaila, can we have your opening remarks, please?
Jai Hind and a very good evening. I'm honored to be a part of such esteemed group of panelists. I am very junior to most of the people present here, and everybody said a lot about education and technology and how it is the need of the hour. It is already an integral part of our education system and how important it is. I completely agree with everybody, and I am not going to repeat any of the things which have been said. As we are already short of time, I would like to emphasize on a few things which I think I should say. It is very important to know what are the hurdles which should be solved and sorted so that life becomes easier, and we are able to sort out these issues so that we can adapt and adopt technology and make life easier, understanding more easy and possible for our students. Now, we are living in a country which has a large amount of students who are living in rural India. I have also been dealing with distance education, as Sir had mentioned. A lot of students do not understand the language in which most of the books, most of the technology-driven systems have been made. A lot of books have been converted, but a lot of times, a lot of portals which have been made are in a language which is English. A lot of times when the teachers are tackling with such students, the typing which is done is English. So we need to work on a system, we need to work on softwares which can converse the language and help our students in enabling them to work in any language which should be made into a possibility. So we as educationists have to work on enabling this technology and enabling a language porting system so that the rural India students can also help in reaching to this technology driven education on which we are working for higher education. Another hurdle, I am a dentist by profession. We are talking about augmented reality systems. Rather, in the morning, I have inaugurated an simulated anatomy laboratory in which there will be a body. The students will not have to work on anything. They will know which organ is where. They can go into a 3D technology system. They will know exactly where which nerve is, where which artery is, and everything. But supposing they get a trauma case tomorrow as a surgeon, as a dentist, can a trauma case be predicted? Can a mandible fracture or a surgical trauma be predicted? We are driving our students away from the actual skills. A skill cannot be taught on an IT technology field. We have to balance the IT and the skills. A laboratory technology, we have to know that laboratory skills cannot be taught in an IT field. I know that I am mostly junior to most of the panelists here, and I'm talking very, very off the track to the topic of today. But we have to know that these are two major hurdles which we still have to tackle in today's India, in today's IT field in India. That when we talk of virtual reality, augmented reality, then the skills which we have to teach to our students, especially who are dealing with lives, who are dealing as dentists, who are dealing as medical, who are dealing as nurses, who are going to become doctors of tomorrow, cannot be only taught on augmented reality, virtual reality, simulated labs. So because we are short of time, I will not go on and on about what I had written. I have more to say, but this is all which I will say and end my discussion here.
Thanks, Dr. Shaila. This is very true even for the creative courses as well. But yes, we'll discuss over this a little later on. My question to you, Mr. Dalmia, with respect to the challenges that the people at the hegemony or people who are the stewards are actually kind of facing in having the decisions regarding adopting the technology. To give you a statistic, barely any universities have a chief technology officer in a university. So in a way, I do believe that there's a big challenge that I know kind of the stewards have to actually adapt the technology. Your thoughts on that and how that challenges can be actually overcome?
By the way, we have a Chief Information Officer, Taranju, for your
Yeah,
information.
yeah. Very few universities actually have.
But yes, see, it itself had to do largely with having a technology architecture at a university or your institution or your college, because you need to have a technology vision as well. And if you have a vision, then you'll have the leaders to look after for that particular kind of vision and try to set some 3 to 5 year mission and then yearly goals to achieve. That's very, very important. See, technology, adopting a technology, the resistance which comes largely on the ROI base that we have been teaching for a long time. We have been doing education business for quite some time. Is this technology really going to add value?
Yeah.
So if anything which can add value and which is measurable in terms of output, then I feel management across institution, universities, colleges, they do approve, and that is how technology has been probably implemented over a period of time. But it is not a easy path to traverse. It is something which you have to really show a long-term value of having a SAP, having a Salesforce, having a no paper forms, or having any other technology in terms of Blackboard, LMS, anything you name it. It has to sink in with the long-term vision, because you can't bring one aspect of technology in academics and not having a well-to-do CRM at enrollment, because end of the day, you are creating leakages at the beginning itself. So I'm saying, as I mentioned earlier, like enrollment, academics, examination, and then this final student graduate outcome, and also the research part, everything has to be weaved along with the technology architecture. Because if technology is weak in any of these segments, the final graduate outcome would get impacted, which will also have a determined results towards ranking in NRF. So you have to really see that technology is really all pervasive, and there are institutions who are really looking forward to embrace that in all possible ways.
Professor Jadhav, demonetization happened and it led to a lot of financial inclusion. Do you see that a lot of literary inclusion can happen because of adapting the technology? Do you see that the GER, which is currently at somewhere around 26.3%, the government has ambitiously kept at 50% in 2030? Do you think that GER being kind of impacted by the faster the universities and the HEIs kind of adopt these technologies?
Yeah, Taranjot, I 100% agree that the only way government can achieve the GER of 50% is if they adopt technology and allow institutions, higher educational institutions, to actually increase their reach much higher than what is prescribed by the government regulators using technology. You know, a lot of people do not want to do a full-time program. If you really ask me, many are looking at a specific skill set to achieve, and colleges, institutions can actually reach out to that specific portal using a small-term program. But the investment in this short-term program many times is prohibitive if you really look at it on a volume-based. You know, the economies of scale cannot be achieved if you're looking purely physical in nature. We are a part of Manipal Group, and we have you have seen that Sikkim Manipal University has been one of the biggest distance education institutes in the country, and it has been possible only through technology. So the same approach, we strongly believe that technology is the only way the government will be able to achieve a GER of 50%. There is no question on that. The only issue that is that I personally, if you really ask me, is that how the adoption of technology happens is. For example, in the last 1 year, we have seen a large number of discussions at our own institutions and sister institutions on how the technology adoption has really not worked well, because many faculty would like to exactly replicate what happened in the class online, you know, and that's not how it is working. So there was a fantastic workshop at University of Pennsylvania on this digital adoption in education. And one of the key things first they said is that, okay, you cannot replicate a classroom online. You know, you will have to reinvent the whole thing, and it requires a lot of effort for reinvention. And many faculties actually are looking forward to going back to the classes because they have found this reinvention is too tedious. And if that is what is continuing to happen, then even though we might actually have a huge scope on the GER, you know, the impact that can be really achieved from technology may actually not happen. So that's the only fear, unless we really come out with a new design of delivery away from the classrooms and
Thanks,
invest.
Professor. Thanks, Professor. Mr. Sudhanshu, what are your thoughts on this? Will the technology actually help in increasing that literary inclusion, and what kind of role the government has to play? Because universities, it's at the end of the day, the technology will also come at a cost, right? And how the government will act, the role that has to play with respect to having the financial implications the university or the HEI will have to do for doing the same. So, APAC team, can you please unmute?
Yeah, that's okay. That's
yeah.
okay. So one thing definitely, which is, I mean, it's a given. There is no two ways about it, that technology will continue to play a bigger and bigger role in time to come in educating. Will it help us reach the GER? Yes. I mean, there is no other way. And unless and until, you know, this whole thing about non-physical teaching goes away and it does not become a block in this, the GER can't be achieved. This is very simple maths. Currently, the statistics say that there are about 3.74 crore students who are there in the higher education system.
Yeah.
Right? Which is at 26.4% GER. So I'm assuming by the time we reach 50% GER, the number of students actually would be closer to 8 crores. Because population bhi badh rahi hai na, so population is not going down. And then we have this brilliant regulation which says 1:20 ratio, number of PhDs in a university, number of years of teaching experience of the university. And the fact is that the number of PhDs passing out, or with PhDs, only in the last 5 years is about an average of 27 to 30,000 per year. As of now, we need close to about 18.5 lakh PhDs to teach our higher education students. 10 years from now, when the GER will be 50% and we'll have 8 crore students, you can do the sum, 8 crores. So in a crore, there are 7 zeros. So 8 crores is 8 and 7 zeros, right? So 20 teachers, 20 students to a teacher. So you will need close to about 40 lakh PhDs. So I think Jain Saab, Manish, Aditya himself is a PhD. Dr. Shailya is a PhD. You can ask any one of them, is that going to happen?
That's an interesting math. Vermaji.
And that's a very right kind of maths as
it's a very simple maths.
It's very simple. Yeah.
I used to hate maths when I was in my 12th standard. And I keep on telling my team, I said the only maths which works in life later on is plus, minus, divide and multiply. So your trigonometry and polynomials and all don't really work. Anyways, having said that, I think that is something which the government needs to wake up to. Okay. Yeah. It's primarily, and I'm being very blunt about this, I think it is primarily being very, very theoretical or living in utopia, hoping that we will reach 50% GER at a 1:20 ratio. And 1:20, I'm saying, are the normal programs. There are specialized programs like journalism, media management and all that, where they insist on 1:15. So number of PhD required becomes even more. So 40 lakh to PhD may enroll nahi karte, so God knows how many of them will actually pass out and be PhDs over the next 10 years. As far as other parts of the higher education system goes, I think every college or university in some way or the other has been using technology. And you are right, if there has to be a full benefit derived out of what all technology can do for you, you need to have a team in which a college or a university must invest, who understand technology and understand how it is going to help and benefit an institution. And as what Manish was saying, it is not just about, using technology to teach. There is a huge, and when I say huge, it's huge. There's a huge cost which can be economized and optimized if you use the right technology in running the rest of the systems, the non-academic systems in an institute. Right? Now, you said, you asked me something about how the the government will help on the cost of this whole IT usage.
Yeah.
If the government does not, what they've been talking of, if the government does not worry about putting a cap on the cost of education, everything is fine. Let's understand this. There was this whole discussion in the previous session from us about international universities to be allowed to come in, etc. This country, higher education is supposed to be not for profit. No foreign university will come over here for a not for profit setup.
Yeah.
If we were to work on a not for profit setup, we've seen the state government and the central universities work on that. But then we also know that the state government and central universities, what is the kind of outcome which happens over there? So I think that way, that is the leeway which government should give, because end of the day, the most critical thing for this country is to have a human resource which is going to be productive, a human resource which is going to take this country to the future. And that is something we should not compromise on. So as I earlier said, we've been put in the right direction. Let us not retract from that direction. Let's only use it to the best benefit for the country.
I think that's perfectly surmised. I think I have been asked.
Can I just add one point?
Yes, Mr. Dalmia, please.
So yeah, rightly put, the cost of education is also increasing, especially if you look at some of the programs like medical, dental, management. And what is happening is that there's a fierce competition among private universities, because as I rightly mentioned, the outcome for a state or a government, because the academic infrastructure may not be as good as what the students are expecting. So they choose private to get themselves educated, be it ISB, be it any of the great medical colleges. And then you try doing scholarship for some of them. And then you try to force fit some of the students into the university. But end of the day, you have to provide a lot of facilities to them as well, in terms of LMS, in terms of, say, a Bloomberg Terminal Lab, in terms of other facilities. That adds up to the entire cost, which becomes very, very unviable for universities and institutions to run all the programs and get students, quality students, and also meet graduate outcomes. So we have to also see that there's a huge investment issue, and that is why the technology relevance is very, very important, where you increase the component of blended learning in order to control the cost without impacting the quality. Yeah, that's it.
Taranjit, I'll just take 2 seconds. They love my maths. Let me give them another maths piece. As per the current regulations, to run a class of 60 for a program, you need at least 3 faculty. And in those 3 faculty, they are graded. And as per the 7th Pay Commission, if you take those graded faculty, the cost of teaching, just the faculty cost of teaching those 3 students is going to be upwards of 45 to 50 lakhs. Which means you are in any case incurring close to about 90,000 rupees as cost of faculty per student in a class of 60. Then people should not turn around and say that cap your fees at 1.5 lakhs or 1.25 lakhs or 2 lakhs. You cannot, because the rest of the cost Manish was talking about is at least 2.5 times of the cost of faculty.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yes. Thanks a lot. I think I'll have to wrap it up. Meanwhile, I'll quickly get the closing remarks. Dr. Jain, your closing remarks and your simple thought on how technology will actually help making students more employable. Quickly, can we have your?
I have shared my thoughts on the technology impact on institutions, students, and all that. Which when all first 3 E's are achieved, the 4th E is employment will automatically be achieved. But the conversation just we got into where Vermaji and Manish has highlighted on the cost of education and all. Structural reforms is the next requirement if we really want to harness the technology to make higher education accessible and affordable, which is the core objective of NEP. Okay, so you can expect structural reforms to happen. Now, assuming that the same structural framework is going to be there or required, then fine. What Vermaji said, the math doesn't help us to go anywhere. So we can only live in a utopia with those fancy numbers of 50% NEP, GER, and so on and so forth. Now, apart from the structural reforms, which is from the government side, where the scale part and everything has to be redefined, the so-called class formula of 60, a class of 60 should have certain number of professors and so on and so forth. Second is revenue models will also change. Now, Bloomberg charges certain things. Just to give an example, Manish, that you have talked about Bloomberg, the revenue models will change. When the pandemic hit us, when we went back to talk to them about renegotiating things and all, they came up with a fantastic model of giving remote access to all, and at a certain cost, which is much so-called subsidized. But what is subsidized now actually may become mainstream going forward, because the companies will get the content guys or the technology guys get scale, and that's where they make money. So with technology and whatever disruption the pandemic has brought in higher education, and whatever guidance that NEP gives us, the entire paraphernalia, the entire ecosystem has to be reformed, starting from the structural part, that is regulatory aspects, which government prescribes, and the revenue models which we all institutions run with. So I'm sure with technology intervention, the cost of education will come down, making a higher education more accessible, more affordable, without compromising on excellence and equity, and which together will lead to better employability of our students. I think I'll rest my comments here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Taran, you are mute.
You're muted.
You are mute, Taran.
Thanks, Dr. Jain. Professor Aditya, can we have your closing remarks, please?
Thanks, Taranjot. I agree with what Professor Ravi and Mr. Sudhanshu were saying. The only way we can achieve the GER is through technology. But the only point from my side would be that that we may be able to, as schools, as universities, we may be able to manage the technology infrastructure inside the campus, but the only way the government can contribute to the achievement of this GR is if they actually invest in the technology infrastructure outside the campus, which actually is lagging. So today when we are taking online classes or doing any sessions, if there are many students who are at home who are unable to connect properly because of this technology hindrance, and the only way that can be resolved is if the government looks at developing the technology infrastructure which is outside the B schools.
Thanks, thanks a lot, Professor. Dr. Shalia, can we have your closing remarks, ma'am, please?
Well, along with what everybody's been saying, I think that we should have some sessions on train the trainer also, so that our teachers who are not technology savvy can learn how to use the technology and how to train the students better and become more technology savvy. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Shalia. Mr. Dalmia, can we have your closing remarks, sir?
Yes, so with the technology growing, we will have more competition and quality education will emerge. Our students and learners will become global leaders, and because there is no geographical boundaries going to be present there, there's more, I would say, advancement of flipped classroom teaching, gamification, and learning analytics will start taking shape at various universities, wherein the all the behavioral aspects of learning can be measured and improved upon, and the world will be a much better place, and we'll be able to produce more graduates ready for Industry 4.0. I'm a firm believer and eternal optimist. The way we are moving in the right direction. Government continue to support us, but I think we as private institutions have also been able to scale up very well, and future is bright. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, sir. Over to you, Mr. Verma, over to you.
I think I totally agree with what Aditya pointed out, and I think that is a very valid point. Whatever we do at universities or colleges, it needs to be supported on the ground. Because if there is no connectivity, if the reach is not there, then whatever we do will never reach the end student. That is number one. Number two, related to that, whatever investments, and one of the things one could look at is the investments which the higher education institutes are doing into bringing in the right technology to enable all this learning smoothness, totally with no hitches. For that, government could look at either subsidizing it, or if nothing else, at least take away the GST which every vendor of mine charges me. I mean, that by itself takes my cost from 5 to 6. I mean, they're not going to fund me. I don't need their funding. But at least remove things which make it costlier for the end consumer, which is what? Which is the student.
True.
Right? So, end of it, right path, unfortunately due to COVID, but the things which were in the background have started coming in the foreground. We should continue this push, not take a step back. I only hope and pray that this percentage of online education being allowed only continues to grow, because that is one way of reaching out to more and more students and reaching towards the GER.
Yeah, I think very well put, yes, very well put, sir. On that note, I think it's time to end, and I think reforming the higher education sector, it won't happen overnight, and actually will need to be in a phased manner. I think the stewards in the university and the government leaders will have to draft a blueprint to make this transition as smooth as possible, specifically the national education policy. And the catalyst for this growth specifically will be the information technology and the new age technology. Staying attuned to these external forces and actually revisiting these internal strategies at defined intervals specifically will be pivotal for this transition to happen. On that note, thanks a lot, and over to you, Zaheer. Thanks a lot.